The opportunity wasn't there. And what I learned is that sometimes in life, you have to create opportunities where it appears not to exist. You want something, you got to create it. But if you really maximize it, you never know where it's going to take you. I had no idea me begging the coach to walk on would take me to the NFL. But it was everything that I did in between that kept opening up those doorways. And next thing you know, here I am. And so that's the message I try to implant in everyone's brain is just that, when you get your shot, you got to maximize it because it could turn into something you never expected.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another very special interview of Masters of the Game. And today, I'm going to start us off a little bit different. Usually I brag on the guest before, but I'm actually going to introduce him and then brag on him a little bit. But let me introduce you to the one and only JJ Birden. JJ, thanks for being here.
Hey, Matt, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be back on. And like I said to you, I haven't done a podcast interview in a long time, but so we're back. So I'm glad we're starting off with you.
I love it, man. And you've been going through rebranding and I mean, you're out speaking on stages now and impacting people in big ways. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we get to dive into your background because your story is fascinating, right? So let me brag on you a little bit, right? And then
right.
I want to start really asking some questions about this. So let me throw some stats that you have on your website out, just to give everybody context, okay? So less than 6% of high school seniors go on to play college football, okay? Less than 6%. Of the 150,000 draft eligible college football players, only, I wonder what number you throw out there, 253 of the 150,000, that's less than 1%, are selected in the NFL draft. Here's two other stats important. The average NFL career is less than 2 years. The average NFL player is 6'2", 245 pounds. Now, why do I go into that is, first of all, the opportunity to play at the highest level is slim. The opportunity based on what we're going to dive into, the position you played, the size you are, was unheard of. And the fact that you stayed so long as you did is incredible as well, right? So 9 years in the NFL, played for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not going to hold that against you. You can see my Broncos helmet above me right now. Atlanta Falcons. You played at 5'10", 157 pounds. And it's not only just like the size and how long you were in the NFL, but I look back at your story, number one receiver out of high school in Oregon, 0 D1 offers, okay? 0, big goose egg. Went to University of Oregon for track and field, and then walked on your sophomore year, made the football team, then drafted in the 8th round of the NFL draft back in 1988, and then played for 9 years in the NFL, right? And I know I'm skipping over a lot of different things, but it's pretty incredible, right? To me, that's like that underdog story. You label it a small man in a big man's game. There's so much I want to unpack on, like, just in your story, but I want to go back to like that collegiate level. You go off to Oregon for track and field, and then you walk on sophomore year. I mean, let me first break down. You're the number one receiver. You don't get any offers. Like, what are you thinking at that point? Like, what's going through your head?
Well, initially you're disappointed. You really are. Because, I mean, I had like 44 catches, 15 touchdowns. I mean, I had the stats, but 5'10", 133 pounds. And all the coaches saw in me was the size, the weight, and they just wrote me off just like that. And Matt, not to get one D1 letter, not even talking scholarship,
an offer, not a
letter that they send to all the seniors. I didn't get that. So I instantly had this major chip on my shoulder and just said, okay, I'm going to create a plan. Somehow I'm getting onto the football field. And that was the beginning of this game plan to prove them all wrong.
Why didn't you try out freshman year of college?
Well, good question. Good question. So when I was being recruited in track, because I was like the number two long jumper in the nation at the time, 24/9. So I knew a track scholarship was coming, and I had a lot of schools that D1 that were reached out to me, and I would always ask, what do you think about me trying football sometime? And all of them were like, nope, you're a track guy. You're a track guy. So when Oregon came to visit me, I asked that question to Coach Bill Dillinger and John Gillespie. And they said, if you come to Oregon and you run the first year, and if you can convince the head coach, you have our blessing the second year to try it. So they gave me that, they were giving me the chance. And that's all I really wanted. And so I went to Oregon's great school, and they were the only D1 school that didn't think it was crazy of me walking on sometimes.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing. And I imagine the other schools are trying to protect you, right? Of like, they want the track guy, they want the long jumper to show up, not get injured, do something silly, right, to hurt their efforts.
Right.
But the fact that Oregon was, and I don't know. I don't know if you ever asked the coach, like, I wonder if they were like, it's such a long shot that, sure, you can try out for football.
Oh, yeah. It was, Matt, the whole process was interesting because, so I honored, I ran track that spring, and I told Coach, said, now remember, you said I could try to walk on. And he says, yeah, if you could make it happen. And so that next week, I went and started watching Oregon Ducks spring practices. So we're supposed to be in the weight room, and I snuck off and sat in the bleachers for 2 days. And I was really just evaluating, measuring, trying to see. And after 2 days, I thought, okay, I can do this. Now I got to create the opportunity. And so the very next day, I stood on the football field by the goalposts because my plan was someone's going to tell me to leave, and I'm going to tell them why I'm here. And I stood there for an hour. And then finally, head football coach Rich Brooks, he saw me, he took a beeline towards me, and I got a little nervous. I was like, uh-oh, here we go. Here he comes. And right away, he goes, Birden, you're the track kid. I saw you in the bleachers. What are you doing out here, kid? And I said, Coach, I want to play. And the first thing he said was, well, we evaluated you. We just felt you were too small. I was like, Coach, I can do it. And we just kind of went back and forth. And he said, well, come to my office the next day. And so I went to Brooks' office. We had a 30-minute conversation. And man, I had to really sell him. I'm about 153 now at that point, but I had to sell him. And he finally said, okay, I'll let you walk on. There's no guarantees. I've already checked with the track coaches. They said, okay, and let's give it a shot. You can come to camp. And that was the door opening up.
That's amazing. So I have to ask, because a lot of athletes that you talk to, and this is at every level, I'll say too, right? It doesn't matter if you're high school, collegiate, pro level, right? But we all have these dreams, aspirations, these goals we want to go after. We want to play here, we want to play there, we want to go create this opportunity, that opportunity, right? There's a rare percentage who actually do it, and not even like, I'm not saying make it, but like go after it. That's what I mean by do it, right? They'll go after, have the conversation, just like you did on that football, stand on the football field in your case, right? Like, where does that come from? Because is there like a deeper purpose? There's a meaning, like the confidence level that I hear in you. And even though you were nervous, right, to have that when he walked up, you're like, uh-oh, like, but there's a confidence underlying that. Like, where does that come from for you?
I think it's something I had to deal with always growing up. I was always the little guy in the class. I was always undersized, grade school, junior high, up until my senior year. So I was used to people looking at me, labeling me, doubting me, and like, I'm going to show you. So I always had that fight because I knew that people saw me as an underdog, but I never really felt I was the underdog, but I thought I could always use it to my advantage. And so, so just being used to that. So when I just understood this, that I had to create the opportunity because Oregon didn't recruit me. They didn't send me a letter. So if I wanted it, I had to go create it. And that's the steps I took. And then the next point was, okay, how are you going to maximize it? And that was the next point.
So I want to key in on something you said real quick. I want to make sure people heard it. And I'll need to go back and like get the exact words. But you said, I never thought I was the underdog, but I'll use it to my advantage.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, right, that sometimes we see athletes and just teams, right? Oh, they're the underdog. The ones who win are the ones who they don't think they're the underdog. They're like, I'm confident. I believe we can win this. We can do this. We can make it happen. And if you want to label an underdog, sure, go ahead. But that has nothing to do with my drive and confidence level.
Yeah, that is well said. And that's something I've tried to teach to people because they would say, well, don't you want to be the underdog? I said, well, listen, here's the point. They saw me as an underdog. That's okay. But in my heart, I didn't believe I was an underdog, because if I believed I was, then that could be reflected in my effort, in my belief, in my performance from every day. I can say, well, I'm the underdog, so why am I even trying? So instead, it was like, okay, they see me that way, so I'm going to use that to my advantage. And I believe the underdogs have a stealth-like opportunity to win, because people don't see them coming, and they usually outwork everyone else. And so it was getting in the right mindset. Plus, I already knew athletically I had the gift, but I also was a gifted athlete who worked really hard.
Yes.
And you know the combination of what they say, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. But what happens when talent puts in the work? That was me. So I knew I had the skills, the ability. I just needed the chance. And plus, they didn't know how bad I really wanted it. They didn't know how motivated I was to prove them wrong.
This is so good. This is so good. I love how you talk about that saying of like hard work beats talent, because everybody's heard it, right? And again, like everybody watching and listening, like you have to pay attention to what JJ is saying here, right? He believed he had the talent and he put in the work. So it's like, do you believe, JJ, that like that the belief has to come before the hard work, or does hard work drive belief, or like what do you need to be successful? Like what comes first, or maybe it's in combination?
Well, I think belief does, because if you don't believe in yourself and your abilities, you're not willing to do the work. If you don't have the belief, you're not going to be motivated to put in the reps. You're not going to be motivated to deal with the challenging moments, the obstacles, the change, and all that. So the belief is what really, I think, propels you, gets you started, gets you there. Then the work, the determination, the confidence, the grit, and everything else plays a role too. So, and I think Matt, one of the best stories I can tell you about how this belief factor played a role in my life was when I was in high school. So my senior year, I remember I had this football game. I had 4 touchdowns in the first half. I mean, it was just one of those games like throw it up, throw it up, throw it up. Game's over. And my uncle was at the game. I used to call him Mr. Uncle Sonny. Big guy. He was a big fan. And when the game was over, so I'm 17 years old. He says, nephew, he goes, you're going to play in the NFL someday. He was the first person that mentioned my name in the NFL. And I said, Uncle, you're crazy. I am not playing the NFL. He says, no, you're going to play in the NFL. I said, no, I'm not. He says, I believe in you so much. I want you to promise me your first NFL touchdown. Now, I think my uncle's nuts. I'm 130 pounds and no way. So I said, okay, you can have my first touchdown. So fast forward to, October 19th, 1990. I'm with the Chiefs. We're playing in the Kingdom. My uncle's at the game. He drives up from Portland. I score my first touchdown. When the game is over, I come out of the locker room with the ball and I see my uncle 10 yards away, looking all proud. And I was like, okay, just give him his moment. So I take a knee and I give him the ball like this and I go, Uncle, how did you know? And here's the point. He says, nephew, I believed you had the ability, but you didn't. So I needed to pour belief into you until you got your belief at the level you needed to be to take you all the way. And I never forgot that, because I had to ride his belief until they clicked that one day in college when I was like, I can do this, so again, to validate the point, I think you have to have the belief, the personal belief, in order to move forward.
And to have somebody like that in your life to pour into you until it clicked.
Yeah.
And then you got that, you were able to carry it from there. And then you sat back and watched the magic unfold. Yeah.
That's the power of what? Mentorships, coaches, teachers, having those people that can be there for you and help you in those moments when maybe you don't have the belief level where you need to be. Maybe you don't have the confidence, but if you got the right people around you, they can really give you what you need at the right time.
That's so good. So you start having this goal to play college. You walk on, you make it, then you start it, you're a starter, and then you get drafted, all this sort of stuff, right? was the dream at some point, like, when did it shift from like just the dream to play college versus now I want to play professionally?
Right.
Or was it not a moment, but just kind of like it happened? I don't know. What was that? What was that like for you?
Okay, you ready for this? I never wanted to play in the NFL. I never believed I could play in the NFL, even when I was in college. So I was focused on track. I mean, the football was really just to prove everybody wrong. And when I made it, I thought, hey, let's do both sports. But my focus is track. And my junior year, I was an All-American. My senior year, I qualified for the 1980 Olympic trials in the long jump. So that was the focus. So getting drafted was a complete shock because, Matt, I had one touchdown in my career at Oregon. I caught 3 balls my freshman year, 3 balls my sophomore year, 21 passes my junior year, 19 my senior year. So I was not convinced I'm an NFL wide receiver. So when I got the call from the Browns, first I was like, who is this? I thought it was my buddies playing around. And
right.
Yeah, it's like, who is this? His head coach, Marty Schottenheimer for the Cleveland Browns. I didn't know who Marty was. I was like, okay, so this is for real, so that was all a shock because I wasn't that kid who was raised thinking I want to play in the NFL. That was not me. That was not my dream. So what happened was when I got drafted, so you get drafted, there's a rookie camp the next week. I'm thinking, well, I don't really want to play, but I don't want to regret sometime later on down the road that I didn't at least go check it out. So I thought, let's go to rookie camp, come back, finish school, get ready for Pac-10s at the time, nationals, see if we make the Olympic team. So I go to Cleveland the next week, third practice, I tear up my ACL ligament. So it was kind of like the dream was forced because
yes,
I couldn't run track anymore. And I'm thinking, well, I can't run. They're still going to sign me to a contract. They got to pay for my health. So let me just go sit on IR for a year. That was my thought. Let me go sit on IR for a year. And I literally did that. And this was the pivotal moment. So this is what I'm getting to. Halfway through the season, because my job was to go to practice, watch, sit through every meeting, rehab. I'm sitting in the film session and I'm watching the offensive coordinator talk to wide receiver and say, you got to do it like this. You got to do it like that. And I'm like, I can do that. And it was a shift. It's like my goal all of a sudden was I'm going to play in the NFL. It was that belief that way I can do this. Now I have to focus on that goal. And that was when everything shifted.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a wonderful thing to a forced dream like that. Right? Everybody listens like, man, how do I get my dream forced on me like that? That'd be great. Nobody wants an injury, of course.
Right.
But that's amazing. What's the biggest difference? Well, let me take a step back. Why did they draft you? Did they say why? Was it speed? Was it they saw something? Like why? Maybe that's a terrible question to ask.
No, it's a great question. And I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that. Marty said he drafted me because I was the mysterious track guy who could catch the ball. That's what he said. You were the track guy who could catch the ball. And we wanted to see more of you. That's why he drafted me. So I wasn't the track guy that was trying to play football, stone hands, couldn't catch the ball. I was a natural wide receiver, and they were intrigued by that.
Ooh, that is good. That's like a T-shirt right there, man. Mysterious track. That's really good. Well, and funny enough, now you're seeing, the last probably 5-10 years, you're seeing these speedsters come in who are like track guys, and they can catch the ball. And I can name a couple that are still on the Chiefs and have some moved to the Dolphins and a couple other places. But you intrigue them. That's so cool.
Yeah. And I think, and the message I try to send to everyone, whether I'm speaking to business professionals or young ones, is that understand that story. The opportunity wasn't there. And what I learned is that sometimes in life, you have to create opportunities where it appears not to exist. You want something, you got to create it. But if you really maximize it, you never know where it's going to take you. I had no idea me begging the coach to walk on would take me to the NFL. But it was everything that I did in between that kept opening up those doorways. And next thing you know, here I am. And so that's the message I try to implant in everyone's brain is just that, when you get your shot, you got to maximize it because it could turn into something you never expected.
Yes. So let's dive into this because you talk a lot about like doing the work, right? Putting in the work. And you just said like those in-between moments, right? Of like what you're doing. And that could be film, it could be working out, it could be route running in your case, like it doesn't matter. But walk me through what that was like. And specifically, the question rolled around in my head right now is like, why were you willing to do that when others aren't, right? And so there's kind of like two different questions kind of within there, but what was that like? And then why were you willing to do it?
I would say first, why was I willing to do it? Because I was raised in Northeast Portland, the hood of Portland, single parent mom, dropped out of school when she was a junior. Wonderful lady, worked really hard, but we struggled growing up. I had the story, food stamps, walking down to the laundromat, one pair of shoes. I had that story and I wanted more. I wanted to break that cycle. I wanted more. And so that was the why. That's what was driving me. Because, if the why is strong enough, the process to get there is not a challenge. You're going to do whatever it takes. And so as I started realizing that, I remember the day when one of my best friends, Lance Woodbury, he goes, "You're going to college?" I go, "No, I'm not going to college. Nobody in my family goes to college." He goes, "Did you know if you're a good enough athlete, you can get a scholarship?" I was like, "What's that?" "That means where they pay for it for free." And I was like, ding, 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 ding. Okay, we're going for that, So I was just learned these different stepping stones along the way. So I think I had that why that was so strong that I was willing to do what it took. Now, but when I got there, you have the wake up call. Everybody's a great athlete. Everybody's hungry. Everybody wants it. And what I saw from my experience, you'd have guys that they were always great. They were always the star and they got there. They weren't used to it. And some couldn't push through that. But me, when I got there, okay, I've been here before. We got to prove somebody wrong. So again, it was a higher level, but it was something I was familiar with. And I think that it really gave me a competitive advantage because I was used to having to fight for it, prove myself, battle for it, where other guys weren't.
The why, I agree, has to be big enough. And then when you start going up these different levels, right, it's kind of reframing it a little bit. It's still connecting with that why, but it's also understanding. I always kind of say, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but if we have to think back to the times you've done it before, you can do it again, right? We have to remember those times and remember the fight and remember the kind of what we want and what we're willing to do. And it's your point, not everybody gets there. Do you think not everybody does that? It's because their why is not big enough, or they haven't trained themselves to fight through?
Combination. I think it's a combination. Everybody's different. I saw both. I saw guys that just didn't really have something that we're passionate about to really keep them going. And then I saw guys that it was unfamiliar territory. Think about this. You got some stars coming in the NFL where they're always the star. The tension is on them. All of a sudden, they're in a camp with 7, 8, 9 other wide receivers who are all good. You're rotating in there. You start seeing who's first string, who's second string, and you're third. You're not getting the reps. I would see guys panic in those areas. I would see them just freeze because they weren't used to it. Where I was like fourth string, I'm in there in the huddle. I'm reading the quarterback's lips. I'm doing everything I can, waiting for that one rep that I'm going to get. It was just such a mindset difference for these ones. And it's why the NFL average career has dropped so much, because either that happens, they don't know how to push through it, or then you have the ones who get through, who make it, and then they get comfortable. And then they take their foot off the gas,
Yes.
But when you're 5'10", 157 pounds, and you're a starter, and they're constantly bringing in a Jerry Rice clone to take your job, the mindset is like, okay, got to prove them wrong again. It was every single year,
Every single year. I think that's amazing. And what a useful mentality, right? It's because it can be used for good or evil, right? Or fuel, or it's going to make you freeze in your tracks, right? But you had that mentality of like, no, I'm going to go prove them wrong. Like, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's see what can happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's such a useful thing.
Yeah. That's why I really think I had an advantage. Just not being the star, always having to prove people wrong, being in familiar territories, but it was a lot of growth I had. There's a lot of things I had to learn. Cause like, I'll give you an example. My very first NFL practice, we're doing one-on-ones. Okay. One-on-ones. Hey, my time to show my speed. I'm ready to roll. We got pads on. And I remember thinking how I'm going to show them the speed, this world-class speed I got. Who's the first victim? Who's the first victim? And I remember it was Hanford Dixon, number 29. He was like in his 9th, 10th year. He wasn't the same player. And I'm thinking, I got him. So Matt, we get up on the line. It's one-on-one and Hanford's in front of me about a yard away. I'm like, Kozer, I want to run a fade. I'm running away from him. Ball snap. I give him a little move to take off and run away like I always do. Hanford locks me up. He takes me like this and he throws me on the ground. He throws me on the ground, out of bounds on the side. Here's the teaching point. I look up at him. I go, dang, man, it's just practice. Hanford turns around. He squats down. He says, rookie, in the NFL, every day is game day. It was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call that you bring your best every day. And what you don't know, you learn and figure it out and then bring your best with that. And for me, I realized that I need to learn how to beat man-to-man against NFL DBs. So then it was like, okay, how do we do this? Let's study all the wide receivers. Let's work on it. Where other guys would be like, man, this ain't fair, man. He threw me down. He shouldn't be doing that. Had that attitude where I was like, okay, how can I get better? How can I learn from this? So.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good story.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ones because it really happened.
What a great veteran though to be able to turn around and take the time, and it was probably a matter of seconds, right? But for him to take the time and say that to you, I mean, that's probably his little test of you. But he's not 8, 9, 10 years in the NFL, and he's like, I know how it works. So either learn how it works or you're not going to be here long. That's probably what he's telling you by saying that. Yeah.
And to this day, I haven't seen Hanford since. He does not even know the impact he made. That was my NFL wake-up call, because every player has a wake-up call where you realize that, okay, you're playing with the big boys. This is not high school, college. That was my wake-up call. And him doing that really impacted the trajectory from there. Yes. It was growth mindset. Okay, you run 4.3, but that don't mean anything if you can't beat press. What are you going to do about it?
Yes.
Study wide receivers, practice. And it took me about 2 years to really get it down, working on that man-to-man, knowing how to use 4.3 speed against these guys. And by the time I got to KC, I was a total different wide receiver. And they couldn't get their hands on me. It was like, I had this mindset of like, you can't stop what you can't touch. I'm 157 pounds. I'm going against DBs who are 210, 220. I don't want them to touch me. That was my mentality.
Oh, when you have to, right? You can't get up to 4.3 speed if you can't get out of the gate. So
no, and you know how it works. Quarterback looks for you.
210-pound wall.
You're getting jammed up. They'll put somebody in there who can do it.
Amazing.
So yeah.
Who's the best quarterback you've ever played with, and what made them so good?
Quarterback. Oh, Montana.
Why?
Because when Montana joined us, he was in his 15th year. He already won 4 Super Bowls. He achieved all these accolades, one of the greatest. But what impressed me about Montana is he didn't care about that. From day one, Montana came in. He studied like a rookie. He prepared like a veteran, and he led like a pro. And he was a consummate leader who lifted our whole team, and he led by example. And what's that saying? Success leaves clues. I learned so much watching Montana. And that's why I think he had a huge impact on me from that standpoint. Not the obvious of how great his arm was. It's just what he did when he wasn't in the game. It was all those little things of preparation that really rubbed off on me. So definitely Joe.
What advice on that prepare like a pro, what advice would you give athletes? I don't really separate the ages. I'm like, you can prepare and it doesn't matter your age, right? If you're 14 or if you're, 40, right? You can learn something along the way. But a lot of times people throw out there, prepare like a professional, act like a professional.
Right.
What does that look like? Like, what advice would you give athletes to, like, what action should they be taking to where it would resemble like, oh, that's what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, it means every time you're in a position of learning, you're fully engaged, you're fully locked in. So if it's practice, you're paying attention, not just your route, you're looking at other players and how they're running. You're listening to the communication that's happened from the offensive coordinator to the quarterback. And, when you're not in there, you're getting mental reps. You're okay. The next group is in there. What's his route? Watch what you're constantly learning. You're in the classroom. You're taking notes. You're watching film. And then when that's over on your own time, you're studying your plays, you're watching film, you're doing that extra preparation so that when it is game day, the last thing you have to think about is what you need to do. It's now more instinctive and you can really, you can unleash yourself as an athlete. So yeah, it's just really taking all those phases of preparation seriously and giving your best every single moment,
The worst thing you can do in sports is think, right? Especially during game day, and me, it's thinking and trying to hit a baseball. It's thinking, trying to figure out like, how do I get around this?
Yeah.
DB here, or how do I get up to 4.3 speed, and trying to figure that out. And if you haven't prepared, it makes it a heck of a lot harder, and you're more likely to think.
Yeah.
Which is just going to tighten up your muscles, and you're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely, because if you're doing the mental or the visualization before the game, like when I played against Deion Sanders, best to ever play. Faster than me. Guy I could tell is faster than me, but he was so great. I studied so much filming him. I was like, Deion has to have a weakness. He has to have a weakness. And then you see the weakness. You identify how you can beat him. And because you've done the study, you've done the mental preparation, you know that when Montana calls X corner or he calls slant I know the release I'm going to use on Deion because I have prepared ahead of time. And like you just said, it takes the thinking out and it doesn't freeze you because okay, I got a slant route. He's outside technique. We're going to attack his outside and boom, and run the route. So, but yeah, the power of preparation like that is it is a superpower,
Yes. And just diligence with it, right? It's being willing to put in the time. It's back to that why. It's back to like proving people wrong. It's like you have to have that attitude about you with the belief like I have the talent. I'm not an underdog. I have the talent and I know I can be successful in this. So I'm going to do what it takes.
And then you have to be willing to be disciplined enough to do those things, to turn off the TV, to not go out with your buddies, to sit and really do the study and put in the time. And there's something I talk about. I say like, discipline is the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it while no one is watching. Are you willing to do those things when nobody's watching you? Because motivation is great, inspiration is great, but none of that stuff works without discipline. Discipline shows up when you don't feel like it. And that was that was habitual for me, so.
That's so good. Well, let me ask you this. Were there times in your career where you kind of had that self-doubt, those kind of my confidence is being tested moments? And if so, how did you kind of work through those? Because I think that's a tough thing as an athlete. So at least like my experience, right? I tell people all the time, one of the reasons I started this business was because I struggled with confidence. I struggled with comparison a lot. And comparison is not bad until you are lesser than because of the comparison, right?
Right.
And I had to fight through that a lot. And I don't want athletes to deal with that, right? So it's one of the reasons I started the business. But so did you have those moments? And then if so, how'd you work yourself through those to reestablish that?
Another great question, Matt, that nobody has ever asked me.
Okay.
And they haven't. Full transparency, I experienced it my very last year in the NFL. I was going into my 9th year. I had a couple of hamstring pulls and I was at Atlanta my 8th year and I didn't I didn't play I didn't have the big year I expected because I had pulled my hamstring, both legs, and I missed like 4 or 5 games. So going into my 8th, 9th year, there was this young guy behind me, fresh out of college, making minimum salary, and that kid was hungry. And he was behind me. And he was over there to come and get my job because my salary was a little higher. So I went through that year. It was interesting because his name was Tyrone, and we're in one-on-ones, and Tyrone goes deep. Boom, I go deep. Tyrone, I was just match him. So then I got hurt about the 4th game. I broke some ribs, and I missed 3 or 4 games. Well, guess who got to play on my behalf? Tyrone did. When I got healthy, they made us split time. And that was the moment where I started second guessing myself. I started questioning myself. Maybe I don't have it anymore. Maybe I can't do it. And then I went home and I said, JJ, you got to get back to the basics. You got to get back to the fundamentals. And I just went back to the fundamentals, getting in the reps, whether it was catching balls, running around, studying. I went back to the fundamentals. And then I went into that next game and I had a big first half. Tyrone got hurt and I said, he's not getting back in. You know, it was a whole minute. He's not getting back in, and he didn't get back in. But I did have that moment. And instead of like sitting in the corner, woe is me, this is not fair. I was like, dude, either you're going to do something about it, or you're going to lose your job. What do you need to do? Let's get back to the fundamentals. Let's get back to the basics, you know? So yeah, that's what helped me.
I love that mentality, right? It's one of my mentors says that action eliminates fear. Right. I think action eliminates self-doubt, action eliminates overwhelm, action eliminates lots of different things, right? It's just, are you willing to go back to work?
Right.
And work on those fundamentals? Doesn't matter sport you're playing, right? It's the fundamentals are the fundamentals. So I get back to doing that.
Yeah. So fundamentals, the basics, they're the basics. They don't change. We just have to decide how often we want to work on them. I mean, I tell everyone when I'm speaking something, I was like, there's only 4 ways to catch a ball. Diamond, pinkies together, your body, one arm. What did I do? I worked on the diamond for hours and hours and hours, and just where I felt I was weak, what route was I just working on the fundamental, because that's what it was all about. So, and sometimes people struggle with that. It's like sometimes people will struggle with that and realize that, hey, you know, how did I make it to this level? Well, focusing on the fundamentals. I got really good at the fundamentals and I stopped working on the fundamentals, you know, so yeah, just made a big difference for me.
So you mentioned this and you talked about like working on the diamond, right? And you said briefly, you're like working on where I was weak. Are you a believer in like work on your strengths and like only do that and don't worry about your weaknesses? Are you like, I want to be as well-rounded as possible, so I'm going to work on the weaknesses along with my strengths? Like, what's your mentality around that when in the NFL or just kind of in general?
Yeah, my mentality is be balanced. Work on the weaknesses, turn them into your strengths, but don't take your strengths for granted. Keep working on those too. You know, I'll give you an example. So I had this really weird weakness. Nobody really knew, but I knew for whatever reason, Matt, when I was running a route, an in route, going from right to left, for whatever reason, I struggled catching the ball consistently that way. I don't know why. I don't know if it was my vision, my hand, but I had this little weakness and nobody knew. But when I dropped a couple balls like that, after practice, I would run like 20 going that way over and over. And then I go to the other side and do it too, because I recognized there was a flaw in there and I needed to make sure my confidence level was where it needed to be in game day. The coaches did not know. Nobody knew, but I knew. And that's that personal accountability. Another point that really allows you to play 9 years when you hold yourself accountable and then you do something about those mistakes you're making.
Yes. And I just having that balance, right? And not being afraid to look at your weakness. I mean, that's what I hear of. I mean, yeah, you can blame it all day long on like, you know, drop the ball. It's like, that was a horrible pass. Like, come on, Montana. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, give me a better pass, which is not his fault, right? Probably in most cases, knowing that guy. But being willing to like notice that and then do something about it. I think that's the game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just from being around very successful athletes, being around very successful business professionals, I mean, those who really want to be the best and stay the best are always conscious of their weaknesses. They're always looking for growth, and they seek those moments with curiosity. You know, what can I learn from this? How can I get better? What do I need to do? And that's what I saw in Montana. Montana would make a throw, and if I dropped it, he would never even take the blame. And I felt bad sometimes, like that was on me. It's like, no, I could throw it quicker. But that was just the kind of guy he was, you know. But in my heart, I knew, like, okay, JJ, you didn't get your head around fast enough. That was on you, you know.
Yes. Is it easy for you to ask for help, or was it easy playing in the NFL? Because a lot of people avoid that. Right? They're like, yeah, I'll figure it out on my own, or I won't ask at all.
For me, it was easy because if you go back to my story, always being small, always asking. I mean, I was the kid in class who used to raise his hand all the time. I don't understand this. I don't understand this. I was not ashamed to ask for help. So when I got into college, I gravitated towards the veteran wide receivers, Lou Barnes, Scott Holman. When I got into the NFL, I gravitated to the veteran wide receivers. In Cleveland, it was Webster Slaughter, Brian Brennan. You know, I get to Kansas City, it's Stephon Page, because I understood that mentors, they can cut down that inevitable learning curve. That experience is powerful. So I've always been that guy, and I'm not ashamed of it, because that's how you get better, you know, by asking questions.
Yep. It's amazing. And I don't know if you kind of had that innate within you, but for all you athletes listening, like the quicker you raise your hand, the easier it is. And it's scary and overwhelming sometimes. And you kind of feel dumb sometimes, but man, as soon as you ask it, people are like, oh, I'll help you. In 99.9% of cases, you might get that one that's not a nice person, but
yeah, I know there was a player on the Chiefs, really nice guy. I won't say his name, but he was a veteran, and he would not help me because I think he felt threatened, because, you know, here I come in running 4.3. Nobody was faster than that on the Chiefs, and I'm flying all over the field. And I understand it as I got older, but first he would never help me. Anyway, he's the one they cut, and I got the job. But I said, I'm never going to be like that. You know, Stephon Page, Emil Harry, they poured into me. So when I became the veteran wide receiver, I'd help all these guys because I wasn't worried about my job. You know, I helped all of them. And the beauty of it was, now when I go back to the Chiefs alumni event, I remember one of the guys, Chris Penn, he came up to me. He's like, man, I just wanted to tell you how much you helped me when I was a rookie. I couldn't believe it, but I just want to thank you. But that just meant so much that someone helped me, and I wanted to pay it forward.
And is that one of the key elements in your mind of like leading like a pro? He's talking about that's one of the elements.
Yeah, I think so, because leaders lead from the front. You know, they set the pace, they set the example, they set the tempo, they set the standard for everyone else. And I always want to be that person that when people look at me, they're going to say, man, that guy, he talks the talk, but he walks the walk, versus someone who is the opposite. You know, they're telling you to do this and do that, and they're not even doing that. You know, in some of my training with leaders, I hammer that point, like, first, your job, if you want your team members to raise the bar of their performance, you got to do it first. You got to set the standard of excellence and consistency, you know? So, because that's what I was used to, seeing guys like Montana not come here and say, hey guys, I don't want 4 Super Bowls. What you guys going to do to help me get another one? Montana didn't do that. He came and said, guys, get on my back. I'm going to take you to the championship. You know, we went right to the AFC championship game, you know?
Yes, I still cry a lot over the losses. Being a Broncos guy, the losses to the Chiefs, and so.
But wait a minute. When I was in KC, you guys beat us about 8 out of 10 times, and it was always the same way. Elway having the ball on the last drive. Elway used to drive me nuts. It was every single time until Montana came in that one time, and we finally got you guys.
Yes. I feel like it's been a while. You got Kansas City's got a quarterback that seems to do the same thing to us. So
yeah, I know, isn't that crazy?
funny how that works. Funny
well,
how that works.
You got an Oregon Duck quarterback. I'm a big fan of, so I really like his
happy
game.
with Bo Nix. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. He's I think he's gonna be good has been good already.
Yeah,
and I think will be good based on his mindset and his maturity level and like the way he works.
When I saw that they picked him, well, I always felt that when I watched him go from Auburn to Oregon, I watched how quickly he learned the system, he controlled the system, and I was like, this guy's ready for the pros. I mean, he is ready. So I was not surprised to see his success as a rookie.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
we're liking it. We're liking it here.
Yeah.
Sorry for
it's all right.
I still need KC to do a little worse, but I don't wish ill will on anyone. We'll put it that way. You Chiefs fans out there. So, I'm gonna have to get down to Phoenix. We're gonna have to do this again. I want to be just aware of your time, stuff like that. Before we wrap up, I love just asking, like, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way, JJ, that they can find you and get in touch if they want to, all that stuff?
Yeah, a couple ways. One is I'm all over social media. I love posting value, giving people value. So JJ Birden is the username on all the platforms. So I would say follow me there. My website, jjbirden.com. That's my hub for speaking, and I got blogs and all that other stuff. But yeah, I would just encourage people that if you're looking for some, I call them daily mist, motivational, inspirational success tips that can help you in any area of life, just go to my social media pages because that's the kind of content I share.
Love it. And listen, I'm going to put links to everything. So all of you, please connect, share, tell everybody about this interview. And I'll wrap us up here in a second, JJ, and then we'll chat for a minute afterwards. But I cannot thank you enough. I was so excited when we connected like a while ago, and then to have this opportunity to speak with you and learn from you. It's just really inspired me and helped me. And I was joking with you before that I do these interviews kind of for me, and it's obviously for the audience, everybody, all the athletes and coaches, everybody listening. But man, I just can't thank you enough for pouring into me, pouring into the audience today.
No, I appreciate you, man. Just giving me the opportunity to share and what you're doing too, because people need this kind of information. They need that positive, upbuilding, just information that's going to help them move through life and accomplish their goals. So I got to just give you a congratulations. Oh. Thanks for making an impact, and just keep up the good work.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you for saying that. Well, for all of you watching, listening right now, please share this episode with all your family, friends, coaches, teammates. You know the spiel. And I cannot wait to see you on the next Masters of the Game interview. Have a great day, everybody, and go make it happen.